welcome everybody to the Celebratory Beer Club, the CBTBC. As always, I'm Jonathan. I'm your host. We're going to have a good time. We're going to have some beers. We're going to enjoy stuff from San Francisco. And as you can see, we have a full-on panel tonight. I'm not by myself. We've got most of our breweries featured tonight. So we will be enjoying two of them. I shouldn't have three beers in an hour. I shouldn't though. So that's why we're going to be featuring, for drinking, the Hawk Hill Hefeweizen from Headlands, as well as the Dino N.D.A from Sidegate. But before I start drinking, I have to say welcome to all of our guests. Ryan, Paul, Dominic, how you guys doing?
Hey, cheers, John. Thanks for having us. Good to be here, and looking forward to having some beers and talking beer with you.
Of course. That's what we're here for. And I gotta start drinking, so because I could just be like talking, starting conversations.
What are you getting into there then, Jonathan?
So for me, I'm getting into the Headlands Hefeweizen, the hot Hefeweizen, starting off with that. Since I'm gonna have two different ones, I do have to be careful which one I start with. But we're gonna pour this in right here. And if any of you guys are drinking along, what are you guys drinking? Because this is hitting all the spots that when I'm having a hef, this is the color. We'll get into the aroma. But yeah, Dominic, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
What are you guys drinking tonight?
Well, so I'm off site. So I'll be really honest with you. I am drinking a Maui Wowie from Altamont.
Nice.
I'm at a location right now, and that's what's in front of me, and really nice fresh Maui Wowie. That was it's a can pour, but it's from April 3rd, so it's showing really nicely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is there Maui Wowie in it?
I don't know. It is California though. You can never guess.
Yeah. Perfect. All right.
Yeah, I got our planter box Pilsner here. So
nice.
This is one of our core Sidegate beers. I kind of call it like my desert island beer. So it's if I had one beer, day and night that I could pair with anything and kind of just enjoy anytime. Yeah, I usually go for a Pilsner. So
nice.
That's where I'm at right now.
And it is featured in the box. So for all of our viewers and listeners, you enjoy it. You're hearing it from the source that it's a good beer. I'm
a little biased, but yeah, right.
I'm also a fan, though. I'm also a fan over at Headlands. So
all right.
Yeah, Paul, it's good to meet you for the first time. I know Kevin pretty well, but it's good to see you.
Yeah, man, good to see you. Cheers.
Nice. And I always like to really get back to my roots, as a kid of with reading Rainbows. Don't take my word for it, but take Paul's word for it. And Dominic, I know with you guys with Great Notion, it's kind of, you guys just have started this tap room not too long ago. And obviously we got some great beers for you guys in the box as well. What are you enjoying tonight?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of ahead of everyone, unfortunately. But I was just refreshing my palate to the Pulpatine that we'll be talking about later.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, whole Equilibrium collab that we do for May the 4th. We launched a handful of Star Wars beers, so really cool labels. Our artist Chad Eaton does a hell of a job. Through the years, he's done a hell of a job, but it's been cool to do more themed stuff for 420. And then with the most recent ones being the Star Wars ones. If you haven't checked those out, they're really sick.
Yeah, no, and it's I'm glad we were able to feature that one in our May box because it makes sense. And I'm always like, is it still May? Is it June? I never know what time it is. But it is time to drink, and I will say this Hefeweizen is, it's got the nose, it's got the body, it's a little hazy, but it is hitting. It's what you want. It's nice. It's crisp.
I'm happy to talk a little bit about this beer. That's our Hawk Hill Hefeweizen. That beer has been around in some iteration for 13 years. But I studied in southern Germany. I studied at Siebel Institute and also went to Germany for brewing school. And I had the privilege of going to a lot of breweries around southern Germany and drinking a lot of really fresh Hefeweizen. And what fascinated me about Hefeweizen in southern Germany was the absolute maximal freshness that you get from that beer. And even how different off flavors. Oh, I've got a colleague here or who's hovering. You may be asking. No, he's not. Um, how like even like in some breweries, you almost get like a touch of matchstick sulfur, which may be traditionally considered, but in beer judging, a flaw. But for them, it was a mark of like how fresh the beer was. I talked to brewers who went from brewing kettle all the way to package or serving at their taps in 12, 14, 16 days, really brewing these Hefeweizens, keeping their yeast strains alive and having that rapid turn and having this maximum freshness. But I will say I got some import Weihenstephaner Hefeweizen a few years back, and it just was kind of this aha moment where I literally went back to the brew team. I said, we're gonna tear this beer down and we're gonna rebuild it and model it after this wonderful beer. And we have added a little bit more of that caramel note that adds a little bit of candied banana on the back palate. You still get some banana aromatics, a little subtle clove, that banana clove being all yeast-derived esters from fermentation. And I find our Hawk Hill Hefeweizen is something that I go back to time and time again. But all of our Headlands beers were, you know, for the longest time we were operating a different production model. We've been owner-operated brewing now for about 3 years. We're in there every day tweaking. So, that's the beauty of the size and scale of our brewery and of craft beer in general, that we can love this beer, honor its spirit, and then improve it every single time that we brew it.
No, that's awesome. And I would say like a Hefeweizen, and especially is a beer that you might not see as often, just because for a lot of customers, if it does have too much or too little of that banana or that clove, and you have, it's a balancing game, right? And like I've had the Weihestefaner Hef, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really good Hefs, and there's others that you're like, oh, this tastes more like like a weedy like pilsner or something. Like it's not like, doesn't have the body that crispness. Um,
But I do
and
like to joke about Hefeweizen as being like the original hazy beer, right?
yeah,
Because hazy beer has changed the game in the
yeah,
past 9 years, 10 years, and no one can argue with that whatsoever. But the original unfiltered hazy beer that's been relatively in vogue in America since the 80s, 90s has been either an American wheat beer or a classic German or a Southern German Hefeweizen. And so it's a little tip of the hat. If you've been drinking craft beer for 30 years, you're
yeah.
probably going to go in and measure a brewery, not, a lot of modern breweries measure breweries on how crispy their lagers are, but the OGs, they might go and be like, how good's your Hefeweizen? Let's see how we're doing.
Now I
Yeah.
do have to ask this is going to be seem off the wall, but for my true Hefeweizen drinkers, this goes to a question for all three of you. Would you put a lime or lemon on
I'd say
it?
no. If you get a good, authentic German style Hefeweizen, you gotta enjoy the clove and the banana and the natural yeast character you get from there. So I think Ryan, we'll have to talk hef sometime. Sometime we it sounds like you've gone pretty deep into it. We kind of done a few over the years, but we definitely haven't done like an everyday. And it's one of those beers that it is very nuanced and hard to get right and different than other beer styles, and that it's really yeast driven, the fermentation and all that. So the cool thing about craft beer in the US is that you can take these great beers you can find overseas, but you're never going to get a fresh version, at your house. So it's up to, local craft breweries to recreate those beers and give their local communities, a way to like experience that without having to, kind of go on a big old flight across the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, I'm over in New York, so like it's not that hard for me to get to Germany. I can actually do it in like a few hours. But for you guys over in San Francisco, that's a little bit of a trek. You might be able to make it at the same time if you go the other direction, but you'll have to make a few stops. But yeah, it is one of those things, and I think that's one thing that I always enjoy meeting all the breweries that come on the show is, especially from different areas around the country of, oh yeah, no, like went to Germany and like I learned, I fell in love with this beer. Or it's like I just like food and I just like to make good tasting food. So then I decided, well, why don't I make good tasting beer? Or, or it's like trying to break the mold of trying to get away from the beers we grew up with. And obviously the East Coast, the West Coast, and the Midwest are all going to have different variations, styles, of what they've been able to do. And so that's why I always kind of like to see all of these iterations and what's inspired all the breweries. And that leads me right into, my next question is like also what's everyone's kind of beer journey of, we got a full panel today, so we're just gonna have fun talking. What's everyone's kind of, we can call it an origin story, we can call it a startup, we can whatever you want. Leading into, getting into beer and then getting into the brewery itself. Because we've got different age breweries represented here today. Even though, breweries like Great Notion have been around since about 2016. But Berkeley's fairly new for you guys, as well as then Sidegate and Headlands, different ages in there. So whoever wants to go first, I'm just gonna chill and drink tonight. So you guys just talk. So
Sweet. Yeah, I guess I'll hop in for this one. I've been with Great Ocean now about 5.5 years, so kind of saw right pre-COVID Great Ocean to what we are today. So I moved down from the Portland location, launched this spot about 2.5 years ago. But my beer journey prior to all that, which had me land with Great Ocean, was growing up in San Diego and their sort of like whole boom in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, and me being 31 at the time, I'm kind of in that cusp of like old money leading into like new money beer drinkers, like pre-Untapped world, which is like kind of an interesting to come up in, where everything was so like, I don't know, I wasn't even part of like the beer advocate scene, but like have many friends that I grew up in that were kind of contributing to all of that. And the only person I could have at the time before I was 21 that could purchase beer for me was buying me like Carl Strauss Tower 10 and like Green Flash. And so I didn't really have the traditional upbringing into like 21, early 20s drinking of like Coors Light, Natty Light, that sort of stuff. So my beer journey kind of started a little early, allegedly.
yeah, allegedly,
yeah. And yeah, just kind of really seeking out and diving really deep into it. In that time of my life, I was stepping away from school and diving into like needing to kind of recharge the batteries of just learning and like knowledge and all that stuff into beer, something I was like in some ways super passionate about. And yeah, kind of just brought me to having my first blueberry muffin. And that launched me into taking a trip to Portland and realizing I could live here, and ended up going back and finishing up my undergrad at Portland State, landed Great Notion maybe like a week into living there. And it's kind of just been history since.
Nice.
Yeah, taking strides towards level 2 Cicerone and all those things, but haven't been on the production side. So if there's anything I speak about today that happy to be corrected about from anyone who's, really stepped foot in that realm, that's kind of the one notch in my belt that I haven't dabbled in quite yet. But
all right, that's why we got Paul and Ryan here. Keep us honest. Yeah. And I do want to preface by blueberry muffin, you mean the beer, not just a blueberry muffin. So
correct.
I'm letting my listeners know, he's like, yeah, I had this blueberry muffin one time from a bodega, and I was just like, I need to craft beer now. So yeah, no, I know it's the blueberry muffin beer, but I just wanted to preface that just to add a little bit. Unless it was just a blueberry muffin, was it just like?
So allegedly, the homebrew recipe before its inception had like Costco blueberry muffins in it. Okay. Allegedly, that's the origin story of that. Yeah.
Okay. All right, but not anymore.
Yeah, hard to scale up on Costco blueberry muffins into like
yeah, that's not very cost effective. That wouldn't be cost effective.
No, not quite.
Nice. Paul, Ryan, you guys are next. Either one.
Yeah, I'll we're talking beer journey, right? I guess I started with a lot of cheap mass produced beers in college and like a lot of people. And at one point in the, I call it mid 2000s, someone handed me something that had big IPA on it. It was a Lagunitas IPA. And at the time, I didn't even know what the hell that stood for, but I knew that just having a beer with that much character and flavor and hop forwardness, probably back then more hop forwardness than you'd find now, just kind of blew my mind. And just thinking about beer is something that was so much more, stylistically. And so just kind of started getting into, IPAs and more local beer. And then I literally got as a gift, a birthday gift, one of those learn to brew at home kind of kits, just like the white bucket with the siphoning thing and a little fermenter, and brought it back to my roommates. I was like, hey, we're going to make some beer. We got this, Sierra Nevada, clone recipe, pale ale. So did that. And the beer turned out not bad. Not bad. Not something that we would put in a can today, but not bad. And just kind of kept snowballing from there, where, I think my second beer was a half, where I bottled it, and the tops, they had the bottles explode from the crazy fermentation, and kind of went through all that, like trial and error and messing with equipment and all that stuff as a home brewer. And to the point where my garage kind of just became this like crazy brew lab. And I met Kevin, my brew partner at Sidegate. We were coworkers at the time, and we would talk beer, and we would share all of our homebrewed beer, and like as much as like homebrewers can collab on different stuff, we would do that. And it kind of in the 2018, 2019 timeframe, we put our heads together and kind of came up with the genesis of what Sidegate became. So we opened up in 2021, so it'll be 4 years in September. We've got a 10-barrel brew system, so nothing too large. We consider ourselves a very like community-based local brewery. Our distribution footprint is all within about 20 miles of where we are in the East Bay area here. So definitely, John, your folks are definitely the only out-of-staters that are probably getting our beer, besides, friends and family that like smuggle it across the border. So,
which we did not smuggle it, in case anyone was wondering. We did not smuggle. We did it.
No, I'm saying my friends smuggled it across the border.
Oh,
we did everything by the book, of course. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. And then I am curious with like the planter box, with it being a Pils. I know we've talked about, like the Hefeweizen going through multiple generations with Ryan. With like the planter box Pils, was it an early on version, or have you guys gone through a lot of different versions of that Pilsner? And was that one of your early ones, or did you kind of wait a bit to be able to do a Pilsner? Because it is a little bit of a technical beer to get right off the bat.
Yeah, no, good question. It's definitely one that we sort of iterated with and tuned. It is a beer that started kind of early on, but it went through a little bit of a transition as we felt like we honed it into what we were looking for. And then we kind of locked on the name and the concept, and we felt like we got everything really, really honed in there. But yeah, it's kind of to me, it's like the ultimate balancing act of you want to have some hop presence there, but you don't want it to be, stick on your tongue for too long. You want to get that little nose of noble hops. But it's got to be balanced with a little bit of kind of bready malt. So we consider ours like a fairly traditional kind of German style. And we it's Hallertau in there. So once we felt like we got it to the place where I could say it's my desert island beer, we're always like tweaking a little bit. I think as brewers or beer people, like you kind of want to be your harshest critic. You don't.
Yeah.
You always, we feel like we can always strive to do a little bit better, but it's one we really like, and it's my go-to and kind of my first recommendation for people if they walk into the tap room and they're like, what the hell do I do? You got 16 taps here. It's like, just try a planter box and then take it from there. You'll be all right.
Nice. Yeah. No, and that's always my recommendation for anyone of like, hey, let's start with a light lager, pilsner if you got it, and then go from there. So it's always nice when a brewery does have something available to be able to, and that's going to be the closest if they're not used to craft beer, right? If they're used to like the Coors or everything that we grew up on, of like let's get our feet wet and then let's go to like a double IPA or like a milk stout. Yeah, let's maybe not jump to the deep end right off the bat. And then Ryan, we didn't forget about you, buddy. I know you're there. I know a little bit about your story now of like Germany getting into the Hefs. But yeah, what's our Headlands story?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you like a brief Ryan version and talk a little bit more about Headlands. I think that's Headlands is more interesting to me, but I was in business school and I was homebrewing a lot. But I had a nightmare. I was studying graphic design and I had a nightmare that I was masking shoes for East Bay catalog. And I just like sat up and I ran to my guidance counselor and I got to change my business or my major from graphic design to business. Because it was too late in the game for me to go to anything else. And after that, I went to Siebel. So it's a professional technical school that studies out of Germany and Chicago. And it was one of the first years that they enabled like really technical homebrewers to even apply for the program that I applied for. They usually required you to have multiple years of professional experience, but to keep their program alive in 2008, 2009, they realized there were some really nutty homebrewers, out there and that they had a lot of technical acuity. And to make that step into the pro world in that era, you needed a reason for someone to hire you because craft beer in 2005 to 2012, getting a job, like the joke was someone had to die. Like, yeah, breweries were growing, but in 2009, there were 900 breweries in America. Now there's ballpark 9,000, so we're 10x where we were just a short 16 years ago. So I went to Siebel, made a bunch of great friends, a bunch of networks. My first gig ever was at Bell's Brewing out of Michigan. I then went on to Tallgrass Brewing in Manhattan, Kansas, where I helped them scale really quickly. Ended up chasing my now wife, at the time girlfriend, but now life partner to California. And I worked for Gordon Biersch at their production facility in San Jose, a massive 200 hectoliter brew house where I shift brewed overnight. And then I went to 21st Amendment and I built a $25 million facility with the owners there with Sean and Nico, which was a fantastic experience. And I learned a lot of great lessons on what to do and definitely what not to do building big breweries. And that was at a scale that and at an era, 2013, 14, 15, where craft changed right at that 2015 mark, especially for larger regional beers. So the thing I'm most proud isn't the brewery that we built in San Leandro, this beautiful state-of-the-art facility, even 10 years later, but it was like the team that I built. And I realized like what mattered to me was that community and those, making an impact. And so my wife and I, we decided to go out and start our own brewery. We founded a brewery in Oakland called Original Pattern. And I transitioned from that then on to director of brewery operations at Fort Point. And then I got to Headlands. And I actually was just being in the network in the Bay Area for a decade. I saw Austin post for a head brewer and I just pinged him. I'm like, oh, hey, like I'll keep my ears open. I probably know somebody. He's like, oh, I want you to look at this facility. I know you consult. And we were chatting. He's like, well, we could have a role for you. I'm like, I don't think you could. And then he's like, yes, I think we could. And so, I was looking for a little bit of a change and staying a little closer to home. I live in Oakland, California. And I was going into the city every single day, and this was pre-COVID, and I really aligned very closely with Headlands and the vision and where they wanted to go. And so, Austin's been at the helm since 2017, 18, 19. There were original founders. They were originally from the Marin Headlands, super rad dudes, Phil Cootie and Patrick Horn. And still keep in touch with them, and they come through the tap rooms. But there was an ownership change to Austin, and they were contract brewing for a period. But when I came on, we decided to bring all our beer in house, owner operated, and we did that in late 2022. And something that really was the pivotal shift for Headlands was opening our first direct to consumer retail location in Lafayette, California. So this is a short 15-minute BART ride from Embarcadero in San Francisco. So if you're visiting San Francisco, you can come to Sidegate. You can make it to Berkeley and go to Great Notion. You can make it to Headlands locations very easily, which is a beautiful thing about BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit, for those not from the area. And we realized that like the taproom had something special. We put our first little owner-operated brewery in there. And when I got off the desk from Fort Point, I got in there and I brewed 30 or 40 beers, turning valves on a 3.5 barrel system. And like, then we scaled to the facility that we lease and now luckily just acquired the building and brewery that we were leasing previously in Pittsburgh, California. So that's deeper East Bay. If you're not really familiar, Pittsburgh, California, not Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, by the way.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with our geography, and it's just been a really fun ride. We took over a really beloved beer garden in Berkeley in June of last year in North Berkeley. That used to be Westbury Beer Garden. We like to call it Headlands Berkeley, but it's Westbury, Headlands, whatever. And we opened a beautiful location in Walnut Creek, California, kind of almost like a crown jewel of a tap room, outdoor beer garden, beautiful space. And what's been really fun isn't just the tap rooms and the growth and the expansion. It's been these locations, the community we've built at every single place, the staff that we retained from the previous beer garden when we came in to take over operations, to retain them, to learn about our communities and become a part of them. And Headlands as a brand is really focused on the environment. We donate over 1% of our revenue. We're part of 1% of the planet. So we find environmental nonprofits and donate 1% of our revenue. And since we've been a member in I think it was early 2022, we've donated $132,000 to environmental nonprofits. And, we're just trying to put our money where our mouth is, make great beer. There's amazing great beer. I mean, Bay Area, I can name hundreds of breweries, but I'm going to name Sidegate. I'm going to name Great Notion. Like, go drink their beer. We love our beer and we think our beer is amazing. And we also just want to be part of our community and give back to the environment and have something to talk about. But still be, fun and easy to hang out with and not take ourselves too seriously. So, it's been a wild ride through COVID and having customer facing retail locations, but all of our locations are 80 to 99% outdoors and having that customer interaction and talking to them specifically about the beer and why we do it. And the why is sometimes the liquid, sometimes it is that beer, but sometimes the why is like, hey, we were able to source these really cool raw materials that were really environmentally friendly. We built a beautiful culture around it. Like, that's just a fun thing to do and stay involved with the community and give back. So that's the Ryan version and the Headlands version, kind of a little brand mashup for you there.
Perfect. No, and I always love using words like mash because then it's beer. Because it's fun. I'm a nerd. It's fine. No, I think it's kind of amazing that you guys have 3 very different stories and journeys into kind of not just your own stories of getting into beer and bringing it into the San Francisco area, but also, that in itself shows the diversity of the brewery systems and the brewing kind of just the business models that there are and the variety of breweries in general. Because, as you mentioned, there's a number of breweries. Does anybody know the exact number of breweries in the San Francisco area right now? Because I couldn't find a conclusive number.
The San Francisco Brewers Guild, which then became the Bay Area's Brewers Guild, had about 155 active members, but that went all the way down to Monterey. That spanned up into the North Bay, included the entire peninsula and the entire East Bay.
Okay.
So it was a pretty broad swath, but within those 155 breweries, there's some wonderful beer.
Yeah, no, and that's where, trying to get it down to, 8 beers to feature in the box. That's a little hard when you have 100-something breweries. Or even if you get down to just the San Francisco proper or, anything that's transferable by the BART, to be able to like get the beer. But I think that's what makes, where most of your breweries in that area don't have major distribution, and it does require people to come in and be able to come visit you guys, does give us this opportunity to share you guys across to all of our all of our listeners, all our viewers, all our subscribers, which is kind of, again, the uniqueness of all of these wide variety styles. But you guys, again, New York, San Francisco, we're dealing with two very different areas. California in general has the most breweries to date, not per capita. We're not going to do per capita because Maine still wins, but there's like 12 people there. But it is what it is. And so, but you guys have a lot more space, and I can walk to breweries here. Probably I'm not going to walk to breweries in San Francisco, and most of California, but I think that's kind of why, you guys did stand out of, making impacts in the community, but also that's my favorite thing about working with beer is the community that it brings together of, even just within the past 40 minutes of like Paul and Ryan, like, oh, hey, we need to talk about hefts now that we're, talking about this, and like bringing those connections and building the communities of getting stuff people like, allowing people to try new things. But really, it's just about the beer and about the people, and I think that's why I enjoy doing this and enjoying craft beer so much. It's because I get to meet cool people like you guys, and get to drink more beer. Which I have to move on to a second beer because I did already finish that hef. That does not mean you guys have to, but you can. I am moving to the side gate Dino N.D.A. And Paul, I am going to need a little info on this beer just because I was doing the research on this beer, and I know there's the Dino DNA, but then also the Dino N.D.A. And I think our fans, our viewers, our listeners, subscribers do need a little background as far as the difference or the similarities, because on Untapped it is very hard to distinguish the two.
Yeah, that's a great question. And probably a good reminder that we should go check out. Essentially, it's the same beer. The same beer, the genesis of it is the Dino DNA. So we started with it was the genesis of our first amber ale. And the way we come up with a lot of our names is a little bit of a crowdsourcing with our staff and throwing ideas out there. A lot of times when we come up with a new beer, uh, Kevin or I will share it with the rest of the staff. Hey, this is what what kind of what we're directionally flavor wise what we're getting, and then we'll get to share it with them, and then everyone will just start bouncing ideas. And so the idea of an amber ale kind of having that Jurassic Park reference to the mosquito and that piece of amber was the beginning of that. And so we just starting with the beer, it's kind of an American style amber ale. Here's the can here. It might show up okay on here. We got some sweet artwork, and it's a Maris Otter base, and then we've got a little bit of caramel, a little bit of victory malt, and we put a little roast barley, more to just kind of give it that, like, roasted barley works really well in moderation to just get that like beautiful kind of color you're looking for, get that really that redness versus kind of like more like a copper. So we throw that in there a little bit, but essentially when we first released it, it was just a taproom release, pouring it on draft, and once we started canning it, we were like, maybe we shouldn't just pull the direct reference from Jurassic Park. Maybe we put our own little twist on it, right? Just to keep our attorney friends, from prodding around too much. And it turns out that Kevin's brother did some pro bono kind of a legal work for us. So this is a little bit of a shout out to him with the Dino N.D.A, little play on words. And our artist, who's a local guy, he works at some local tap rooms. He's an awesome dude. He kind of came up with this concept of this crazy T-Rex signing a little document from this guy. So, and once we got it, we just kind of stuck with it. So now it's it's not a full-time, it's kind of a twice annual release. We kind of think of amber ale season as like spring and fall maybe. So we usually release it, yeah, right around March, April, and then again maybe after kind of that Oktoberfest season. So
Yeah.
that's the, but yeah, it's just a good balance with a little bit more hop forward than your kind of English style ambers. But to me, like someone I love the term, like you drink with your eyes first. So
Yep.
you make a beer that's really beautiful to look at. An amber ale is definitely like one of those ones that you see across the tap room and someone's like, oh yeah, I'm having that, whatever that guy's got. That looks good. So
Yeah, no, and I'm gonna say it is a beautiful color. It has that amber. If you do hold it up to the light just right, you do feel like you should see a mosquito. Not that there should be bugs in your beer, but like it does give that, that idea that amber. A, a lot of ambers are like brown, right? It's like it's a brown ale, but it's an amber, or it's like a, similar of like a Vienna lager, but like this is truly amber in color. It's got that brown, a little bit of that golden kind of also reddish hue to it, see-through, crisp. But it does have kind of that toasty malt on that finish of that little bit of a caramelization, which is really nice. But yeah, no, I have to agree. Like the I know one of our viewers, Jonathan, not myself. I'm not talking to myself about myself in third person, but also mentioned just seeing the T-Rex in a suit is just really funny, and it grabs you, which is always kind of important of not only telling the story of the beer, but getting people's attention with artwork is a huge thing. And I know we've kind of touched on it a little bit, which I know Great Notion gets amazing artwork on theirs. Sidegate, you guys have, I thought it was a lawyer T-Rex. I mean, does he have a name? I guess that's the important part.
maybe we figure that out right here, right now. Because
Yeah,
no, I don't know. I think he's just
he's
I don't
just
know. Does
T-Rex.
a
He's just
T-Rex
a
from
lawyer.
Jurassic Park have a name? I don't know.
What's
And here's a
what's
little.
what's
I don't think
Kevin's
it.
brother's name is my question.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, so here's a little. So right there. So that's the Jurassic Park entrance, right? And then you got
Oh,
all the
okay.
smoke, all the mayhem that went down there. It's
All
on
right.
fire. And so he's basically signed the N.D.A. to say, like, hey, I can't talk about what went
That's
down
great.
back in the park.
It's amazing.
That's great. I
That-
honestly, I didn't even notice that small detail till you pointed it out.
I kind of forgot about it myself. So
That's so
thank
good.
you
Yeah.
for. No one's asked me so many questions about that label in a long time. So it's
Well, that's what we're here
it's
for. I'm
cool.
here to just ask the random questions.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
I do also love the slogan as well of "Friends Don't Knock." And is that just Sidegate's slogan of just "We're friends, we're just gonna drink together" kind of thing?
That pretty much sums it up. Yeah, I mean, so the idea, the name, the side gate, and our brand is all about using beer in our beer garden to be, just a community kind of place. So just in the same way, maybe you're barbecuing in your backyard. You live out here in the burbs, and you got some friends coming over. You're like, hey, just come in through the side gate. We've got beer, we got barbecue. So that's kind of the idea. And in fact, when Kevin was home brewing back in the day, my beer partner, he and his dad would brew in the backyard and have their neighbors come over and stuff. And I did the same thing just out of my garage. So my neighbors all thought I was cooking meth, but I was, trying to had to clarify things with them. But yeah, I mean,
Did they
it's
believe you?
really, yeah.
Eventually, once you gave him a six pack, you're like, yes,
Once you give them a beer and everything's all good. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right,
So that was a big part of our mantra, or still is, right? Is using beer as a way for people to get together and catch up with friends and family, and kind of have that community gathering place, that meeting place. We get to work with a lot of nonprofits and other local business owners and organizations, and be the kind of place where people can get together and kind of enjoy our California sunshine or extreme heat when we have it sometimes, and enjoy some good beers. So
nice. And I think that's also the cool thing is like the advantage that you guys have over some other areas is that you do have like the California sunshine. You are able to kind of utilize that for either having, Ryan, like you said, like 80% of your venues are outside, and then Paul, you're able to have like outside barbecues and kind of, recreate that cookout kind of vibes that some places may not be able to. I mean, in the East Coast, 80% of our venues need to be inside because, winter storms, and you're not really worrying about that. And I know that, there's that common misconception that San Francisco gets rain all the time, but I know that it's not true. But, I think it's cool that you're able to kind of, recreate all these ideas of kind of those summer get-togethers. And I guess this also leads into Dominic with you with, Great Notion opening it down in Berkeley as well. Um, do any of you guys feel that like the warmer weather, the California weather, does that limit the either your beers of what you want to brew, that you feel like you need to brew or provide lighter flavored beers, or does that not have any impact?
I would say definitely, specifically the Bay Area. The one thing that my GM here, who was actually really plugged in to the scene, has worked at several breweries around the Bay Area. The one thing he said was, we need a West Coast and we need to do it right. And that was the one thing that, for the longest time working for Great Notion, we were exclusively hazies and fruited sours, heavily adjunct beers. But everyone is absolutely crushing it with West Coast here, Ghost Town. They're kind of the reigning sort of king that people are, Nose Goblin's obviously a crazy, modern day Pliny, I guess. And so that was the one thing that we needed to do, just hit it out of the park with a West Coast, which we've done. We have the Knife Hits on. It's a collab with Ghost Town. Sent Ryan up there to go teach us how to do it. And every year around this time we do West Coast up there and then a hazy with them. So it's definitely shifted a lot. And just like drinking trends in general, I think like we've had to diversify the catalog. We can only go so long making only hazies and turning people away who want a hef or want, more of the traditional stuff.
Nice. Yeah. No, and obviously like because I've known Great Notion, like we've featured a lot of breweries in Portland area in the past, and like even though it's still West Coast, but going up and down the coast is going to be very different scenes, very different styles. Again, Portland, northern West Coast versus California. Here also the weather's different, and so it's going to bring different vibes, and different ingredients are going to be more readily accessible. So it is always kind of interesting to see how across the country and how the climate does play into a lot of those different styles. Ryan and Paul, what are your opinions on brewing styles, the weather? Does it play an impact on that, or do you guys just brew what you want?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, obviously we want to enjoy the beers we're making, but we're like, if you look at our taproom sales, I mean, probably like a lot of other breweries, 40 to 50% of that is IPAs and hazies. So we could have 2 beers on the menu, 1 IPA, 1 hazy, and then we could have 7 other lagers and Belgian styles and hefts, and we'd probably still hit that ratio, right? So we love at Cygate, we love kind of having that diverse portfolio, different styles, something for everyone. And whenever we can kind of steer people to try something new, which a lot of times is getting a hophead to try a Belgian beer or a Hefeweizen or an amber ale, right, for that matter. So I think a little bit of our mission is to get people to try different styles of beer, at least the way I kind of think about it. And so it's we brew, those of us that are around beer a lot probably find that you're not drinking double IPAs every day. You're looking for something that's going to be a little more of that, kind of a sessionable. So that's why, for me, it's a Pilsner, but just getting folks to try different styles. We always kind of think of it as like a win when we get someone to like just try something they haven't had before and really be into it. So
Yeah, Paul, I gotta chime in and just like applaud that notion. It's a great notion, if I do say so myself.
There it is. There it is.
No, but because you know, it's something I've talked about a lot, like whether I've built breweries or brands or built breweries and brands or been part of a new brand or revitalizing a brand, whatever it is, education is key. And that connection and Paul, like creating that dynamic of like, oh, you love double IPAs, you only drink double IPAs, but guess what? We have this really rad, guess what? It's also pretty strong. Like you like bigger beers that have that sweet alcohol backdrop. Try this Maibach, you know, and like you know your customer well enough to be like, hey, give this a shot. Not super hoppy, but it's got a lot of similar vibes. It's still really drinkable, still really nice. And I think that's something craft beer needs to get back on the horse with because you know everyone's kind of doom and gloom about craft beer. I'm the exact opposite. I think this is just it's a minor consolidation where we need to kind of chin up. Everyone's making great liquid, so we gotta it's got to be better than it was a year or two ago every single year, and we need to engage with the customers and they're not customers, they're community. There's like get to know them and teach because when you teach someone something, they remember you.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh man, I remember the first time I had an amber ale and I said I'd never have an amber ale. And guess what? I'm having an amber ale for the fourth time. And it wasn't this one isn't a side gate, but my first four were. And now I'm trying boot amber and now I'm trying this amber and I'm trying that amber. So it like that I think is so critical for our retail spaces. And I think, you know, part of the success for Paul's space and Dominic, your space, a great notion, like that that's what that's about. And I'm not an expert at hazy beers or fruited sour beers or you know, I've done some barrel aging or big barrel beers or really sweet pastry stouts. So if I want to drink those beers and learn about them as a brewer, I don't care if I'm a home brewer or whether I'm a professional brewer for 20 years. I'm going to go to Great Notion. I'm going to sit at the bar. I'm going to order them and I'm going to talk to these people and I'm going to be like, teach me your ways, you know? So that's part of the community that keeps us connected and invigorated, whether it's within the industry or connecting with our community. So I applaud you, Paul, on that.
Yeah, but that's a good point. There, the community is just fantastic of brewers, and you know, especially here in the Bay Area, where it is kind of the idea of like a rising tide raises all ships, and getting people to recognize that, you know, having great local places to drink beer that are making great beers, and you know, you can experience different styles and have great examples of traditional styles, and you know, have that community gathering place is huge. And that's how you differentiate, obviously, with the beer. But there are so many great breweries out there. You can't launch a brewery saying, I'm going to make the best beer anyone's ever had. You got to get all those other things right. You got to make great beer, but you got to get all those other things right too. So
yeah, no, and that's where, because I also like work as a bartender and lead our brewery tours here in New York. And when someone's always like, "Hey, what's the best beer?" I'm like, we're not playing that game. Like, what's the best beer? I can't. What do you normally like? Because what I like is going to be way different than what Ryan likes, what Dominic likes, what Paul likes. Like, it's going to vary because if you only like light lagers and I give you a barrel aged Flanders Flemish red ale, you're probably not gonna like that, but I'm gonna think it's amazing. And I think that's where us that are in the beer scene, because one of the styles that's not my favorite is a red ale, but does that mean that I'm not going to drink red ales? Absolutely not. I drink red ales probably more than every other style because I want to find the right one, right? I want to see what's going on with my palate. What makes this one different than that one? How long are they malting that one? And what hops are they adding in there? And that's easy for us to do because like we're ingrained in this and we understand kind of the background and the science, whether we're home brewers, head brewers, or we're distributing or we're selling. But then trying to, I think, creating that opportunity for guests and for newer, individuals coming into the craft beer scene of being able to feel comfortable enough to ask those questions and to find those beers, to find, what they can drink and what they do like. I think I think that is important. And I think you guys are, by creating those environments, creating those communities, is an opportunity that, as we've said multiple times already, craft beer scene is way more than it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Even, yeah, like early 2000s, it's 9,000 breweries, which means competition is way more than what it was. So you do have to make good beer, but then also you you can't just make good beer and then shut out everyone else. You need to work with each other and collaborate and also praise each other when, and give each other props when you are making good beer and doing something really cool. So I think that's why it is an exciting time for craft beer, is as it's bigger than it has ever been. It also provides more opportunities to, let's take things a step further. Let's, not just creating, not new styles, but let's turn things on their head. Let's try new hops, let's try new malts, and let's try new things. But also let's go back to the classics. Let's do those hefts, let's do those pilsners, let's do an amber, and let's do an amber and let's make it a lawyer. Then we're putting those spins on it. So I guess with that, as we're kind of seeing all of these different things, for each of you guys, what are you seeing as being the next steps of either craft beer or specifically San Francisco beer scene? What are you guys seeing, or what are you looking forward to coming in kind of this new era? That's a big question. So I'm going to take a sip for dramatic pause, but you guys go ahead. Paul's unmuted, so Paul's going for it. I'm calling out Paul. Paul, go.
Yeah, that was not by design, but I mean, I think again, like I said earlier, there's so much great beer out there, and there's so many great examples of breweries that have been successful making really excellent beers, award-winning beers, and all these things. And so, I think a little bit of it is, there's always experimentation. That's kind of one of the things that the craft brew industry has in spades, right? Where you're not going to see that from kind of your macro beers and things like that. Is the craft beer sort of that testing ground? And I think for us, we're a small local brewery. We have a tap room, and our tap room is our testing ground in a way, where we've got our locals and our regulars come in. They're the best in terms of, they give us great feedback, and you realize your beer is not just for the cicerones and the beer judges and the BJCP folks. It's for everyone. It's the most democratic, kind of thing out there. So you get a lot of feedback. And I think for us, one of the things is just kind of maybe even some of these like kind of hybrid styles of beer, where we're like, man, like our two most popular, we got IPAs and we got Pilsners. And so how do we find a way to kind of blend that kind of hybrid style? And, you see these like West Coast style Pilsners or hoppy Pilsners or whatnot. And, it was 5 years ago, it was the cold IPAs or things like that. So just kind of trying some different things. And, again, also having some of those traditional styles. But I think mostly it's, kind of what we were throwing around earlier, was just getting people to understand beer a little bit better, expand their horizons, and just educating them about beer. So I feel like that's where the little to medium breweries can stand out, where they have those interactions with with their customers. And you can be medium sized and do it too. You can find ways to do it through beer festivals and things like that, where you're kind of branching out. So we definitely try to go after all those kinds of opportunities. City brew tours, getting beer across the country, talking beer with you here, John, is great. So that's where, like, hey, being able to do that and is something that's really special about craft brewing.
Yeah, for sure. Dominic, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo a lot of what we've chatted about, really leaning into education. I think that's even more so important in this sort of like untapped era of beer, where people are almost only exclusively drinking anything over a 4.0. And like lagers aren't, a lager that's a 4.3 is essentially like the conversion rates of a 5-star perfect untapped beer. And it's like, again, that's kind of their only source of education. And so when you can kind of reframe that thinking and chatting with the person actually behind the bar there, and we have those tools to like kind of steer them in a direction that is more talking about the intent behind the product itself, and more like process driven nuances within all those things. I think that could really shift the consumer's mindset in many ways, and not just, showing me their phone. I've actually had this interaction where they've showed me their phone and they've mentioned, I have this filtered to highest to lowest rated. Can you pour me the first beer you see? And I just completely refuse to do that. Yeah. And it's even more so important. And I think, again, all of us kind of echoing each other's value and community. That's, I think, the one thing that can sustain through this roller coaster of craft beer right now, post-COVID. You could slap any name on the front of this bar, and I think we'd still get the same faces, the same people, the same energy that come through each and every day. And being less product focused, I think, is the shift that we need to take to kind of, again, sustain another however many years and continue to grow or bounce back, most would say. So,
yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Dominic, I love that too, because it's really interesting, and I don't hang out a ton on Untapped, a little bit, but it's funny too, like IPAs, hazies, or West Coast, always getting crazy rankings. And even at great breweries like Saisons or perceived great or hype breweries, however you want to frame it, like the Saisons, the Belgians, the lagers, they're always like, oh, this is the best Saison I've ever had, and I'm gonna rake it a 2.5 because I don't really like it. And so, we all need to kind of understand that crowd, Yelp is important, Untapped is important, and crowdsourcing these experiences is very, very important. But what you just said was beautiful, where it's like, hey, even if someone who's a diehard Untapped fan, who loves Great Notion, who wants to come in and drink their beer, I'm going to talk to you and understand your preferences and offer you something that is maybe a unique or an expansion of your journey. To me, like that, again, I commend that. That to me, that's the experience, because craft beer is built on a pub culture, in my opinion, where that's always been around community, and it's our thing to talk about and around, and to live our lives and have enjoyment from. So, we build our taproom spaces at Headlands to be primarily outside, because it's hard to not be smiling, holding a beer in the sun. Yeah. And that's kind of our ethos and how we see our spaces. And is that tough when we have a really cold, rainy 6-8 weeks? And that's it. I still bike in those periods. It's really not that bad. But people still stay inside in California in those periods, where the East Coasters would be sitting there like, oh, it's not even that wet out.
It's not 30. We're fine.
I came up in Vermont, New Hampshire. Like they would all still be at the pub if it was raining in Berkeley. But when it rains in Berkeley, we tend to actually like close the venue, because there is not an indoor seat to be had. But yeah, I think that is part of it. Like there is a nuance and a magic to our products, and every single brewery here has a very unique offering. So there still is this wildly amazing and complex diversity between every single person, even though we're talking about hefts. But there are offerings at both of those breweries that Headlands doesn't have, and there may be one or two things I have that they don't. But the secret sauce is the community and the engagement that we have, and the connection that we build. And that little bit of education can push someone to stay engaged and be like, oh my goodness, maybe I do like the barrel-aged red Blender's Red, and I didn't three months ago. Yeah. And I'm actually going to go deep diving into Gozes and buying import Belgian beers, and then finding American craft wild ales and all these things that can open up, a whole new world of discovery. So it's to me, that's what's exciting about craft beer. That's why I've been doing this for as long as I have, and I don't plan on changing. But again, just want to throw some props, obviously, to you, John, for having us. But Paul, everything you've said, and Dominic, that really resonated, and I appreciate you for approaching people that way. And I think that helps you. I think that helps your business. I also think it helps craft beer in the Bay Area. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
and I think with that, Ryan, you've brought us full circle, and we've been talking for the last hour of building community, what makes each of your breweries special, and what you're bringing in, and kind of these journeys. And it is, technology does play a part in that. And as like Jonathan in the chat has mentioned, like he's just using Untapped just keeping track of it. And like I myself, I don't really pay attention to the ratings of a beer because I can't judge someone else's palate, right? Like, and I don't want to judge a beer based off of my palate. I'm weird. I just do tracking, and I don't do like ratings on anything. I don't do 0 because that would be mean. But just keep it, neutral, but because it's there as a tool. But being, some people do use it as like, give me the highest rated, give me the quote unquote best beer you have, which again is going to be it's very subjective. But I think that's where all of you guys and our friends over at Alameda, who, are also featured in this box, are creating great styles, unique styles. And I think that's where, in an area like, California, where there are literally the most breweries in the country in one state, of everyone brewery is doing something different, or has at least an aspect where you can get diversity from brewery to brewery, which is very important. Which is why it's impossible to say, in one city, of like, what's the best brewery in this city? What's the best brewery in this area? I'm gonna say all of you guys because, again, I might be getting my hef from Ryan, but then I'm gonna get, a blueberry, muffin, the drink. Maybe, I don't know. Dominic might have a blueberry muffin for me. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Go to Costco before I come over. And then, but I'm gonna get a Pilsner or a Amber Ale from Paul. Like, I want to have in the same way of having like a wide mixture of a flight of beers, I want to have that availability in every area that I can go to. And I think that is what's so exciting about the craft beer scene, and what we all have looked forward to, is what you've all said is, you know, amazing communities that are allowing you and supporting you guys to be able to do these diversities. And I think the biggest thing with each of you are bringing the similarity of, let's also educate and provide, like, this is the best beer for you as an individual, which I think is, some breweries just make beers that they like, and that's really cool. But then also, like, hey, this is what I like. Let's see if you like it too. And kind of sharing that experience. With that, though, we've been all over the place. Is there any last minute plugs that each of you want to plug for your brewery? Because I do want to, I know that there's not major distribution for Paul and Ryan. And I know Great Notion does some in specific areas. So really, we just got to bring people to you guys, which is at the end of every one of these episodes. I'm like, I just have to do a road trip. I would fly. I wouldn't probably drive to you guys. That would take a little while. But we have to do a trip over there. But yeah, is there anything you guys want to plug? If it's upcoming events, upcoming moves, upcoming beers, this is your floor for the next few minutes and if you're just like, nah, I'm good, that's okay. That's also good.
I forgot to mute myself, so I think that means I'm going first again. I'll learn, but I learned for next time. Yeah, I think for us, just the thing that you guys all kind of hit on was that it's an experience, right? It's not just about that ranking and trying to have the best beers. So, the experience, like, one of the things that we have a lot of fun doing, and is very cool that we can kind of pull off as a smaller brewery, is we host a homebrew competition every year. So we try to stick to a theme rather than just being like, hey, just come in with like a kind of open season on styles. So this last year we did British beer styles, which is, it's not in our wheelhouse for Sidegate to brew styles like this. It's not one of our favorite styles that we get really excited about, but we found that there were some great local homebrewers that were really excited to have a homebrew competition, featuring British beers. And found ourselves slowly getting excited to brew something that was kind of traditional, British in that way. So we hosted a competition. We got about 50 entries. We had a group of BJCP judges kind of whittle it down, and then we picked a best in show beer. And the winner of that beer, we actually just recently brewed with them and scaled it up, and we'll be putting that beer on tap this coming Saturday on the 17th. Nice. So it's a British strong bitter, which feels like a very quintessential kind of British style beer. It's it's got some nice color and maltiness to it, but it has that, a little bit of balance with the bitterness. It's different than an American style amber. Just all those British beers are so kind of like understated. So it sounds really intense, but it's like 5% ABV and 38 IBUs or something like that. So, but just a really nice beer, and we're really excited about it. So it was actually a home brewer. His name's Dirk Manders. He's located in the East Bay, San Leandro area, and we brewed with him. There's a club called the Bay Area Mashers that he's a part of, and so we'll be launching this beer that was, his recipe. We worked together to scale it up at Sidegate. That'll be this Saturday. So something cool we can do. Fun to be a part of that community, and it helps us make better beer too. We both started out as home brewers as well, so it's been fun.
That's really cool, and I do agree that like an ESB is not every brewery does one, and it is, any type of special bitters is kind of a misstyle, because I don't remember where I heard it, but I heard it years ago that the main reason they never picked up in the United States was because everyone was like, "Oh, it's bitter. I don't want that." Just because it's in the name, but it's not a bitter beer. I mean, there's IPAs that are way more bitter. But I don't know if there's any truth to that statement. But just the name having bitter in it has kind of turned people off, just like, original Hefeweizens and unfiltered beers kind of turned people off in the beginning. But I think that's amazing that bringing home brewers. And are you, with future competitions, are you gonna do the feature of the winner? You'll ramp them up each time, or is this kind of just a let's see what happens kind of thing?
We've done it over the last 3 years. So we did Belgian beer our second year, and then 2 years prior we did a big beer. So the first year is called the Big Beer Bonanza, so it's high gravity beers. We ended up brewing a Baltic Porter, scaling up a homebrew recipe. Last year was Belgian. We did a Belgian Golden Ale, and then this year was the English strong ale or strong bitter for this year. So we'll have to figure out what's next, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, no, you got a year to figure it out, but no, that's awesome. Cool. Dominic, Ryan, who's going? What we got to look forward to?
Cool. Yeah, I just want to say, just since moving here over the last 2.5 years, this stretch of 3 miles in the East Bay that we're in. I mean, Headlands has moved in maybe just a little over a mile, 2 miles north of us. We've got Phil used to brew over at Almanac, open up a old factory location here in Berkeley. Cellar Makers taking over a spot where Rare Barrel used to be. So if you're ever out this way, we have the perfect just stretch of breweries that are just stumbling distance from each other to really hop around and get a good grasp of the Bay Area's scene out here.
Nice. And I always love stumbling from brewery to brewery. If I don't have to get into a car, then that's ideal for me. Drinking multiple breweries and getting in a car is not ideal for anyone. So, that's great. Cool. And Ryan, last but not least.
Sorry, I'm blowing up the chat. I was just trying to hype.
I know, it's great. Yeah, no, hyping everyone. I'm loving it.
No, I mean, look, just go ask questions. Go to your local brewery and talk to them about it, and ask about the beer that you wouldn't order. I have a top secret collab. Actually, it's a special bitter. It's not a strong bitter, but it's a special bitter with a storied. I mean, I guess the scoop would be, I'm building a collaboration with Dave McLean of Magnolia History and launching a beer here with him over the summer. which is really special. You know, I used to listen to podcasts like this, and I used to listen to Dave McLean and Russian, you know, Vinny Chillerza from Russian River, and you know, you name it. They just Sean O'Sullivan, who ended up being one of my bosses, and I a respected, you know, mentor within the industry. Learn, because as you learn, like that's where the discovery and the excitement comes from, and that's what it's all about. And it gives us an easy touch point to talk about and be excited about, and then get to know each other. And so, you know, I'm so glad that Cygate's launching an English beer. I'm gonna go drink it. Like I didn't know that was happening this Saturday, so Paul just picked up a customer. Um, and that's what it's all about. Like, is that the hypest style right now in the Bay Area? No. Am I gonna put ours in casks and use Dave McLean's favorite, you know, English ale strain, and then also release it on nitrogen because I'm nuts and I overpromised and will probably, hopefully, deliver? You know, yes. And I actually like had that meeting with Dave over a Lucre side pole at Olaf Factory Berkeley. So, you know, back to Dominic's point, you know, so we all have something to learn from each other. And as long as we, you know, as the industry gets tight, my biggest worry is brewers and breweries are going to get, you know, spiky arms and shoulders. And they always kind of have been on the sales side.
Yeah.
But the brewers and the community can't, because that's what differentiates us. Like that continued camaraderie and note sharing, and like, hey, you know, you did something and learned from it and it made me a better brewer, or improved my offering to a customer, and I can share that and leverage this. We're still the underdogs relative to macro and import beer. So we still need to crowdsource that knowledge and do the best we can. And so, you know, like again, John, I'm going to shout out. I'm going to steal a page out of Paul's book. But thank you for creating this venue for us to chat, and just getting to know even Paul and Dominic and you better in this, you know, hour and 20 minutes has been a real pleasure. So come to the Bay Area, come drink Bay Area craft beer. Full stop.
And I think that is the perfect end to this past hour and 20 minutes of, you know, you guys building connections and finding out about things that are happening, and going to get the beers. I've had on breweries from all over the country, and there's times that they're like, hey, can you like give us contact information, because like now we want to collaborate after like talking to each other on here, or finding out that like, you know, they've worked with the same people, or they know each other, or like they're literally two doors down. And that's just a testament of how close the brewing industry is, and why everyone listening should go down, over, up, wherever you're at in the country. Go to San Francisco, go to the Bay Area, go get some fantastic beers. If you can make it this Saturday, go get an ESB, or a special bitter, or, you know, go get, you know, sours and hazies. Go over to Great Notion. Go get, you know, get whatever you want. Go to these places, get the beer, drink the beer, talk to these guys. It was a pleasure talking with all three of you, getting to know you guys in more detail than just, you know, getting beer from you, but then also getting it out to everybody. With that, I'm going to say thank you guys for being here. Thank you for providing the beer. Also, thank you to our friends of Alameda to providing their Burma Ale and Lager, which their Burma Ale just won the World Beer Cup this past week. So, you know, shout out to them as well. And with that, I'm going to say cheers and good night. And I will see all my guests and listeners next month. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Hey, cheers. Thanks again.